definitely a US-dominated nominee year. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today we're going to be continuing with some long-form Oscar-related content. Most people typically see at least some of the movies nominated for Best Picture or the acting categories, but there are some Oscar categories that tend to go under the radar for the majority of people, none more so than the short films. There are 3 short film categories, and although they do get released in theaters, they don't make it out everywhere. The indie theater I go to was showing all the shorts on the big screen again this year, and since it's a couple-hour drive for me, I once again spent nearly 8 hours straight in the theater watching them back to back to back. Just like the last several years, I'm doing a 3-part Rankography series to give everybody a sense of these shorts, even if you don't have a chance to make it out to see them yourself. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, ranked lists, and trailer reactions. I've already talked about the animated shorts, so next up in my 2024 Oscar-nominated shorts Rankography series, documentaries. Of the 3 shorts categories, this one always seems to be the most underseen and difficult to track down, because it's shown in the fewest theaters. The 5 nominees are The ABCs of Book Banning, The Barber of Little Rock, Island in Between, The Last Repair Shop, and Nai and WIPO. Since this is a Rankography, I'm going to be ranking these shorts, but remember, this is just my ranking, not the ranking, so be sure to post your own personal ranking of the 2024 documentary short subject Oscar nominees in the comments below. Coming in at number 5, Nai and WIPO. This is a US submission and was directed by Sean Wang. This short focuses on the director's paternal and maternal grandmothers, showcasing their relationship with one another and their outlooks on life. Overall, I thought this was a pretty decent set of nominees this year, so even though this is in the number 5 spot, I still enjoyed this film. It was definitely the lightest and most playful of the nominees this year, but it did feel a bit insubstantial as a result. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does end up putting it lower than the other 4 for me. Bizarrely enough, this is actually the second film by director Sean Wang that I've seen this year, as well as the second film that features his actual grandmother playing his grandmother. I also saw his semi-autobiographical feature debut, Dee Dee, at Sundance this year, so it was really interesting to get a documentary look at his grandmother as well. There's not much of a story here per se, but there is something really heartwarming about the sister-like bond that these 2 grandmothers have with one another, as well as how much they clearly love their grandson and look forward to the time they get to spend with him. Despite how silly the film often is, there's still something profound and, frankly, a little melancholic underneath it all. It's never made the focus of the story, but this short indirectly captures the loneliness that comes with growing old. Coming in at number 4, Island in Between. This is a joint Taiwanese-US submission and was directed by S. Leo Chang. Framed by the director's own personal experiences, this short explores the role of kinmen in the relationship between Taiwan and China. Even though I've got this in the number 4 slot, I've got to say that this was probably the most frustrating short to me, simply because I wanted more from it. This one kind of takes a dual approach, being partly a history film and partly something more personal for the director and his family. The short gives us a fairly brief overview of the conflict between Taiwan and China, and the role that the island of Kinmen played and still plays in that. I wish we got a little bit more to the history side of things, but I do appreciate the context that the personal components bring to this story, because Chang gets at how his perspective has changed over the years, especially after traveling. It's all a little indirect, but the short does touch on propaganda and how that can really significantly influence people's opinions without them even realizing it. There's a little more substance to this film than there was with Nai and WIPO, but this is another nominee that feels a little lacking and incomplete. Coming in at number 3, The Barber of Little Rock. This is a US submission and was co-directed by the duo of John Hoffman and Christine Turner. This film focuses on Arlo Washington, a barber and community activist, working towards economic justice and financial equity in Little Rock. This short is hampered a bit by its structure and presentation, but it gets at some really important topics. Now, we tend to get a few nominees kind of like this each year. You know, the ones that shine a spotlight on some sort of social issue. We've also had films like this in the past that focus on highlighting some sort of community leader or activist. When this short gets started, it kind of feels a little run-of-the-mill and like it's gonna play out like any of those other familiar past nominees. Now, I'm not saying that this thing does anything spectacularly different, but I was pleasantly surprised by the direction that this film ends up taking. It sort of gives us a crash course on its central issue topics: economic justice, generational wealth inequity, redlining, and financial disparity within historically black neighborhoods. It gives us this information as well as region and city specific context for it. And it's frustrating and infuriating and sad and unfair, but it doesn't wallow in it or stop there like many other documentaries have in the past. Instead, it then shows us the hard work and passion that community activists like Arlo Washington have, as well as the inspirational strides he and his partners have made in trying to counter these unfair systems and practices in pursuit of equity and economic justice within their community, and the impact that that model could have elsewhere. Coming in at number 2, The ABCs of Book Banning. This is another US submission and was directed by Sheila Nevins. This story focuses on the rising practice of school districts restricting and even outright banning books from schools, and showcasing the thoughts of elementary school students on that topic. So I have a feeling that I probably have this short a little higher in my ranking than most other people will. From a structure and style standpoint, this is definitely a little underwhelming. The production value is admittedly bland. There's definitely nothing fancy about how the information is presented to us, and it leans more into the observational side of things than it does any kind of unique or profound statement making. But from a topical perspective, this is the short that really grabbed me out of all 5 nominees. The majority of US states have school districts that have banned books at this point, which is just an infuriating concept to me. And the short leans into that. The fact that we are flabbergasted by this. Again, the style isn't anything flashy, but we do get repeated examples of books that have been banned, along with one of the quotes from the book that was cited as the reasoning for its banning. And it's just so frustrating and mind-blowing that this is a thing. Books about Black history, LGBTQ+ stories, books about the Jewish experience, the Muslim experience, books about strong women or female empowerment, books about climate change or environmental issues, all banned and unavailable to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids. And it's with that aspect, with the kids, that the short really makes its point. Because actual 4th graders from a Florida school district with lots of banned books are interviewed. These kids are given some of these banned books to read, and then asked their thoughts on the stories, as well as their thoughts on why the book was banned and if it was warranted. And it really showcases not only how astute kids are, but also how naturally accepting and unprejudiced they are. So it's a bit of a clunky documentary, but the main takeaways are impactful. So that means my number 1 documentary short of 2024 is The Last Repair Shop. This is another US submission and was co-directed by returning nominee collaborators Ben Proudfoot and Chris Bowers. It focuses on the Los Angeles Unified School District's long-running student instrument rental program, as well as the shop in which these instruments are repaired. Ben Proudfoot is getting to be a very familiar name for documentary short fans, having won the Oscar in 2022 for The Queen of Basketball and having been nominated along with Chris Bowers in 2021 for A Concerto as a Conversation. These two team up for another music-related short here, and personally, I think it's the best that either of them have done so far. This is an altogether positive, uplifting, and inspiring short. It certainly helps that it focuses on a program that's as unique and impactful as LAUSD's free instrument program, but it's also just a very well-constructed film. The repair shop for this instrument program is divided into 4 units: strings, brass, woodwinds, and piano, and this short mirrors that in its own structure. We see 4 sets of stories that all follow a similar pattern. First, we're introduced to a student who's briefly interviewed about their love of their instrument and the impact that it's had on their life. Then, we follow that student's instrument as it makes its way into the repair shop. Not only do we get to see the craftsmanship that goes into these repairs, but we also get another interview, this time of the employee working on that instrument. And it's these interviews that are much more robust, because we basically get these people's life stories, and really get to see how music, and this job in particular, has impacted their lives. I, like so many other people, played an instrument in school, and so there's definitely this level of connection and understanding of what this film's getting at for me, but I think even people who never played an instrument will be impacted by this one. Alright, so that's my rankography of the 2024 Oscar nominees for documentary short subject. Have you had a chance to see these documentary shorts? If so, What does your ranking look like? I'd love to see some reasoning for your order, so be sure to post it in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out my animated shorts Rankography, and stop back in a few days for the live action Rankography, as well as some more Oscar related content like my continuing ranking series of all 23 Oscar categories. Alright, so if you get some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this Rankography, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more Rankographies like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.